All right, so this is the last section of this chapter. So we learned, we learned distance formula, midpoint, and what was the third thing after that? The slopes, okay? So the slopes are going to come into play with what we talk about today. All right, so hopefully you remember a little bit about that. And again, a lot of the stuff that we do today should be familiar to you. If it's not, I'm teaching it basically as if it's the first time you heard it, okay? So if you didn't have it before, I'm not making any assumptions about, well, you had this last year, so boom, we just fly through this stuff. So let's see what we want to do first. Okay, let's talk about this. We're going to talk about the equation of a line, and there's going to be two formulas that we're going to use to find the equation of a line. They're used separately, kind of. But anyway, I'll just show you. The first one. It's a form that we don't use all that often, but you will see it from time to time. It's called the standard form of the equation of a line. I'm not going to write of the equation of a line. You can write that if you want. But this is called the standard form of the equation of a line. And here's what it is. It's ax plus by equals c. Now, it'd be nice for me to say, well, the A stands for this, the B stands for this, and the C stands for that. Well, it really doesn't. It's just a nice, compact way to write an equation of a line. The X goes first, the Y goes second, and then the C is there by itself on the end. Okay, it's equal to just the letter C. So in order to know how to use this thing, and when you see it, what do you do with it? Well, we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's kind of go back in time a little bit, and let's talk about a couple things. So if I had... We did this, right? Cartesian planes, and we did ordered pairs and all that stuff, right? Yep. Yeah, okay, just making sure. Because I teach 3 different geometry classes, and we're all at different places, and it's hard for me to remember what class we said what in. So that's why I ask you that a lot of times. So let's talk about what the x-intercept is. Anybody hear that before? The intercept? You probably don't remember the x-intercept, but you do probably remember what? The y-intercept. Does that ring a bell at all? So what about the x-intercept? Well, to intercept something. So like, I don't want to get political on you. You can.
Isn't it where a line goes through a point on the x-axis?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Okay, it's where a line hits. It's the point where the line hits the x-axis. Then the y-intercept would be what? A point where the line goes what? Through the y-intercept. Okay. So when you talk about the word intercept, you could use all kinds, but I don't know. The first thing that popped into my mind is the news with Israel and the bombs and all that kind of stuff, right? Have you been following any of that stuff? Well, Israel has this thing. Oh man, I had it in my head just a second ago. They have a cool, fancy name for it. Something shield, the Iron Shield, maybe. I don't know. Does anybody know what that thing's called? I forget what it's called. It might be the Iron Dome Shield. I don't know. It's something like that. But what it is though, it's basically a rocket system where it's like top of the line in the world. I mean, like nobody has anything quite like the Israelis have. So when bombs come into Israel, they have these other bombs that come up and they hit the bombs in the air and then they blow up and they don't land in the in the cities and stuff. It's pretty cool. The Iron Dome, I don't know. It's something like that. Look it up. It's pretty cool. And it saves them like thousands and thousands of lives, so it blows the bombs up in air. So what they do is they intercept the missiles. That's the word that they would use, okay? So Israel's rocket would come up and intercept the Palestinians' bombs, okay, or the Hamas's bombs and that kind of thing. Again, I don't want to get political. I'm just saying that's the first thing that pops in my head. They intercept. They cross each other's paths, okay? Does it make sense? To intercept, okay, that's what we're talking. So if we talk about the x-intercept, which one is the x-axis? Is it the horizontal or the vertical? It's the horizontal. That's the x-axis. Okay, that's the horizontal one right there. I'll put arrows on it. That's the x-axis. So if you have a line, I'll put it in a different color. If you have a line that crosses Now it crosses both the x and the y axis, doesn't it? There's a couple situations where it just crosses the x or it just crosses the y. But those are special cases. But normally if you just had a regular line, it would cross the x-axis and the y-axis. So the x-intercept would be right here. Everybody see that? So I actually just taught this in my senior class. Okay, we just started doing this stuff in there. So look how far ahead you are. So this is the x-intercept. So what is the coordinate? Let's say that's 1 and that's 2 right there. Okay, what is the coordinate of that point? What is the ordered pair of that point? Say it. Is it 0, -2? You start here. What direction do you always go first? You always go in the x direction, right? So you always go in the x direction first because the ordered pair is xy. So you start here, so it's -2, 0, exactly. So that would be -2, 0, okay? So what is the 0? On the x-intercept, it's -2, 0, crosses the x-axis at -2, 0. What is the y point of the x-intercept? It's always what? It's always 0. Anytime. I could have lines cross all over the place, right? The x-intercept is always going to have the y equal to 0. Everybody hear that? So the x-intercept, the y is always equal to the 0, and then the x part of it is wherever it crosses the x-axis. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So I was going to do this on 2 different graphs, but let's just do different colors. So what if I had, let's do it like this. All right, so let's have this pink line right here. Now, the x-intercept would be right here. We already talked about the x-intercept. What are we going to talk about now? The what? The y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where it crosses the what? The y-axis. The y-axis. And that would be right here, whatever point that is. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3. Let's say it's -3. Is that all right? Just making these up. All right, so that pink line right there, it crosses the y-axis. Where does it cross at? -3. So what is the 0? Like if I started here and I wanted to get to this point, what is that point right there?
0.
It's 0 first, right? And then it's wherever it crosses on the y-axis at what? -3. So for the, color coordinate this. So for the y-intercept, I'll just shorten that. Is that all right, INT? So for the y-intercept, oops, let's try this, that's what I want. What's the 0 on the y-intercept? The x is, right? So for the y-intercept, we know that the x is equal to 0. Do you see that? So in order to find an x-intercept, what we're going to do, and this will make sense after we do this next example. To find the x-intercept, what you're going to do is you're going to set y equal to 0. It'll make sense once I show you the equation, okay? So write that down. To find the x-intercept, what do? You set y equal to 0. So what if you wanted to find the y-intercept? Then you're going to do what? Set the x equal to 0. Very good. You just do the opposite, okay? Now that might not make much sense to you right now, but here in a second it will. So here's what they're going to ask you to do. This is example 1. It's in the book. It says use x and y intercepts, because we're going to learn another way to graph this stuff. But right now, okay, we are going to use the x and y intercept. And when your equation is in the standard form, right, let's try this again. There we go. When your equation is in that standard form, using the x and y intercepts is a nice, fairly simple way to graph it. Okay, there's another way we're going to learn later today. There's another way to graph it, but when it's in standard form, it's usually a little easier to use the x and y intercepts to graph it. So, that's supposed to be a 1. It's kind of squiggly 1. There we go. Example 1. Here's the equation. 2x minus 3y equals -6. So I want to graph this. All right. I want a line that represents this thing right here, 2x minus 3y equals negative 6. And there is a line that represents this equation, all right? And I got to figure out where it is. So how in the world do I do it? Well, what form is it in? Well, we only know one form so far. What's that one? The standard form, okay? So it's in standard form. What would the A be equal to in this situation? 2. What is the B? Close. Negative 3. That's right. It's negative 3 because look, it's ax what? Plus by. So what is the b? It's a negative 3. It's plus negative 3. Agreed? And what is the c? Negative 6. Okay? Just so that you know, most of the time that we put this in standard form, almost all the time we put it in standard form, these numbers, the a, b, and the c, they need to be integers. But the first one, the a, needs to be a positive integer. Okay? So is this in true standard form? Yeah, because the a is positive and the others are integers. What's an integer? It's just not fractions, not decimals, okay? It could be negatives, right? Just like negative whole numbers. That kind of, it doesn't really go together, negative whole numbers, because whole numbers aren't negative, but in our head, in my mind anyway, I think negative whole numbers are integers. Everybody got that? All right. We won't worry too much about that, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. So what are we going to do? We're going to graph this using what? What did they say? I didn't write it down, but they say using the x and y intercepts, okay? So what does that mean? So what we're going to do, did you see what I wrote down earlier? So if I want to find, let's do the x-intercept first. So I want to find the x-intercept. So what do? What's our first step? What did I say? Set what? Set y equal to 0. Exactly right. Okay? Everybody with me? And then I'm going to be able to figure out what the ordered pair is. Remember, on the x-intercept, when the y is equal to 0, then whatever the x is, that's going to be where it crosses the x-axis. Okay? So I'm going to use this formula right here. I'm going to throw in a 0 in for the y, and then I'm going to solve for what? Solve for x. Okay? And then I got my ordered pair where it crosses the x-axis. So that's at least 1 point that I know on my line. How many points does it take? It takes 2 points, the minimum. 2 points to make a line. Would you agree? Yeah, we talked about that almost like the week 1. So let's do this. So I don't do anything to the x right now. 2x minus what? 3 times 0 equals negative 6. And now we just solve for x. The rest is pretty easy, especially since this is 0. All right, so what do we just end up with? 2x equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 2. X is what? Negative 3. But what's my actual x-intercept? It's a point. Remember, a point needs 2 things. It needs an x and a y. So what's my ordered pair? Negative 3, 0. Very good. Okay, because the x always goes first and the y always goes second. Everybody with me so far? All right, that wasn't so hard, was it? Just make one of them 0, solve for the other letter. All right, same thing with this one. Now what do you think we're going to find? The y-intercept. Good. So now we're going to find the y-intercept. Do you know what we're finding, right? We're finding the x-intercept. What did we just find? We found out where the line crosses what? The x-axis, right. And now what are we going to find? We're going to find the y-intercept, which means where that same line crosses the y-axis. Once I find them both, I could put both the points there, connect both those points, boom, I got my line. Okay? So let's do it. So what are we going to set? We're going to set what? X equal to 0. So let's go back to this equation, and now instead of y being 0, we're going to make the x equal to 0. So I put 2 times 0 minus 3y equals negative 6. This being 0 really makes this thing easy, doesn't it? All right, so it's negative 3y equals negative 6. Divide by what? Negative 3, very good. And then y equals 2. But what's my ordered pair? What's my y-intercept? It's 0, 2. So these points right here, those are crucial. The graphing part's super easy if you can just find 2 points, right? And that's what we just did. So I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me grab this thing. I could do this without all the grid marks, but it just makes it look a little nicer. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right, so let's put some color in here. We never use this orange color. Why don't I ever use that? All right, so all we got to do is graph the 2 points and connect the 2 points, and we're done. That's as simple, that's as easy as it is to graph that thing right there. So you can do either one, doesn't matter which one's first. -3, 0. So you always start at the origin, right? And you go -3, 0. So 1, 2, 3. Look what we did. We just found where it crosses what? The x-axis, that's right. Okay, and here's a point right here where it crosses the y-axis, 0, 2. So I just count 0 on the x, and then I go up 2. Thank you. You got to get a pass. All right, I got my 2 points. So I just put my 2 points and I'm done. That's it. Now, what have I been saying? What do I do to those 2 points? I got to connect them. That's right. Now, I don't just start here and stop there because it's not just a line segment. What is it? It's a line, right? So it keeps on going. So I like to extend mine out beyond the graph. But it's got to go through those 2 points. That's pretty good. And then put some arrows on there. And there it is. That's my answer. That orange line right there, that's my answer. That's the graph. Okay? So we took something that sometimes can be a little bit complicated to graph. There's several ways I could graph that. There's a bunch of ways I could graph that. All right? But I think when you have it in standard form, I think doing it this way is the easiest way. Okay? Let's do this. We've already talked about slope, right? So I don't have to reteach slope or anything. So let's take that equation, that 2x minus 3y equals -6. Let's take it and actually solve for y. Go ahead and do it while I'm writing this down. So take that 2x minus 3y equals -6. It'll be 2 steps. And solve for y. Get y by itself. So give that a shot. Oops, didn't grab the equals, did I? Or the negative. There we go. Can you get y by itself? Might be a little tricky. What's the first thing you're going to get rid of if you want to get y? If you want y to stay there, what are you going to get rid of first? Okay, it's not just an x though. What is it? It's a 2x. Let's get rid of the 2x. How can I get rid of a 2x? Subtract it. That's right. So I'm going to subtract a 2x. And then I'm going to subtract a 2x from this side. Okay? That'll add up to 0. Bring this stuff down. I get -3y. Now, let's watch here. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, this part right there. Can I go -6 minus 2 is -8x? Is that what I'm doing here? Why not?
Because they don't have like terms.
They're not like terms. Exactly what I wanted to hear. They don't have like terms. Okay? So what I can do is just write, don't write this part. I'll show you how to write it. You could write -6 minus 2x, couldn't you? Well, what I'm going to do, we have a reason for this. And you might even know the reason because you've done this before, all right? But what I'm going to do is I want the x to go first. So how would I rewrite this with the x to go before the 6? So what is this equal to? Go ahead and say it. You got it. -2x minus 6. It's the same exact thing, isn't it? But there is a reason why we want the x to go first. All right, that's why I did it that way. So -3y equals what? -2x minus 6. I like that number that's sitting there by itself. I always like that to be on the end. And I like the x to go first. We got one more step and we're pretty much done this. So what can I do to get the y by itself? Yeah, divide by -3. It's not just a 3, it's a -3. Now, you got to be careful on the other side. I got to divide everything by -3. So I divide this by -3, and I also divide this by -3. You could have put the whole thing over -3, but what we're trying to do, though, I would do them individually. Okay? We're going somewhere with this, okay? Believe me. So now I got y. That's what I wanted to do, right? Didn't I tell you to solve for y right here? So I got y by itself. Let's simplify this a little bit. What's a negative over a negative? It's positive. So I'm not going to write it negative 2x over 3. I'm going to write it 2/3. Now watch. I could put the x on the top, but I'm going to put it right off to the side. Don't put it down the bottom because that's not equal to it. So for instance, what is 2/3 times 5? It's 10 over 3, right? Actually, that's not what I wanted to do. I'll just do this. I'll do it like this with the 2 and the x. Watch. 2x over 3 is the exact same thing as 2/3 times x. You see that? Because what is x? X is x over 1, right? So I could just go 2/3 times x over 1 or just 2/3 times x and put it right in the middle. Right? Do not do this. Don't write this down. Don't even write it down. A lot of people do that. Is this the same as that? No. All right, because right here, you're multiplying the 2 by the x. Right here, you're multiplying the 3 by the x. That's completely different, isn't it? All right, so you could either put the x on the top or off to the side. And that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to put the number out in front. We call that the coefficient. Have I used that word in here before? Can't remember.
No, you haven't used it in here, but we've used it.
But you used it before? Okay, good. So the number out in front of the x is called the coefficient. So what's being multiplied by the x. That's how we would usually write it. Everybody got that? All right. So anyway, let's continue with this. So I'm going to write 2/3 x. And what's this going to be? Negative 6 divided by negative 3. So it's positive. So I put a plus, and it's a 2. So this is the same exact thing as this. It's just written a different way. That's all it is. It's the exact same thing. All right? But why would I even bother writing it like this? Because this is in another form. This right here was in standard form. This is in another form. Do you remember what that form is from your Algebra 1 class last year? Well, it looks like it's y equals something x plus something. There you go. Ryla, out of the blue, comes up with, not out of the blue because she already knew it, y equals mx plus b. Is that familiar to you? Yeah. And what does the m stand for? We've talked about that. That's the slope. Now, here's something that we talked about today. What do you think that 2 is? Let's go back to the graph. What do you think the 2 is? The y. It's not axis. The y what? Intercept. It's the y-intercept. Exactly right. Do you see that? So check this out. This formula is kind of nice because it gives you 2 things that are really important about the line. And the other form was fine, right? Because we could find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. This one gives you the y-intercept as well, but it gives you something else that's really important as well, and that's the slope, okay? It doesn't really give you the x-intercept, but it does give you the slope. So just looking at this equation right here that I got in the box, tell me what the slope of that equation is. The slope of that line, I should say. What is it? Say it again. 2/3, yes, 2/3. All right, that's the slope right there because that's the thing being multiplied by the x. That's the m. Do you see that? Y equals mx. M is the number that's being multiplied by the x. Well, the 2/3 is being multiplied by the x. So the 2/3 is your slope. And that's super important. And then the thing that's being added at the very end, what is that? That's your y-intercept. And you just see it right there. So when they first start off, they're going to ask you to graph something like this. They're going to say graph, I don't know, negative 3x plus 5. So just looking at it, it's in that form, y equals mx plus b, isn't it? So what is the slope? Just looking at it without doing any math, what's the slope? It's negative 3, okay? Now, slope is rise over run, so if you want to put it over 1, that's fine, okay? Everybody okay with that? So it's negative 3 over 1. What's the y-intercept? Oops. Oh, why am I? Let's try this again. y-intercept, I should write the word intercept. Y-intercept is what? 5. Just looking at it. So how does that help me graph that equation right there? Well, I'm glad you asked. Oops, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Let me copy this again. Come on. There we go. Copy. How do I copy? Keyboard shortcut. How do I copy? Control C. All right. That's something that you should know as a little kid. And I teach high school kids, and they don't know how to copy and paste without right-clicking or without going up to File or Edit or whatever it is. All right, just Control C. Right, Control and what paste? Control V. Why V? Why isn't it P? Yeah, why isn't it Control P? Because Control P is used for what? For print. That's right. That's why they don't use Control P for paste. They use V. Why V? Because where is the C and where is the V on the keyboard? They're right next to each other, okay? Control C, Control V, all right? Anyway, that's free of charge for you. But as a desktop publishing teacher, or I used to be anyway, that's super important. So what do we do? How would I graph this? Let's use another color. I'll go green if it shows up. First thing I'm going to do is look to see what the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? It's 5. So I go on the y-axis and I put a point at 5. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put a point right there. All I need is one other point, isn't it? All right. Now I don't know the x-intercept on this, and I can't just look at it and find the x-intercept. I guess I could do a little math, set y equal to 0, and then solve for x. I guess I could do that. But I could find something just by looking at it. I can find the slope. The slope is -3/1. Remember, this is rise over run. Thank you. So, I can't hear you. Yeah. You didn't watch all my videos, did you? Yeah. Well, you're supposed to. That was your assignment for this weekend. You said you would do it. All right. So rise over run. That's what the slope is, correct? Yeah? All right. So what am I going to rise? From the y-intercept. Okay, I start at the y-intercept. Everybody got that? So I put a point at the y-intercept, keep your pencil there, and I rise how much? -3, which means I go what? Down 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't put a dot yet. All right, just keep your pencil there. All right, and then I run how much? 1. So it means I go to what? To the right 1 place. Then I put a dot. And now all I got to do is what? Just connect them. Just draw a line between those 2 points, and I'm done. So it's actually pretty easy, isn't it? All right, you don't have to do, when they give it to you in that form, y equals mx plus b, you don't even have to do any math. All you got to do is find the y-intercept, which is always right here. You put a point there, take the slope, and you rise and you run. Boom, boom. Connect them, and you're good to go. So let me connect them. Again, don't just, that's off a little bit. It's close enough. Don't just connect the dots. Make it go through. All right? Like that. Because it's a line. It keeps on going forever. Make sense? All right. Let's go back to that other one that we did. All right? Do you remember how we solved for y? Why in the world would I do that? Because it's going to help us. Let's copy that. Let's put it up here. Let's stick it right there. Oh, goodness. Why doesn't it just grab? Let's try this again. I'll just use the arrows to move it over. It's so picky on grabbing it. Okay, so that thing right there. So now let's take a look at that. Does it work? Remember, how did we graph it earlier? With x and y intercepts, right? Right, we set x equal to 0, then we set y equal to 0, and then did the math and all that kind of stuff. But look at this. All we had to do was solve for y, which is only a couple steps, right? You only had to do a couple steps, solve for y, and now you can graph it. So let's graph it now. Let's do it in a different color. Let's go yellow. It's going to be the same exact thing. It should be if we did it right. All right, but I'm just going to do a different color just to show you. All right, so what do we look at first? We look at the what? Y-intercept, okay? We look at the y-intercept and we put it down. So what is the y-intercept? It's 2. So we go up right there, right where we said it was before. Because we already found the y-intercept earlier anyway, didn't we? Okay. But now, what's the slope? Slope is 2 over 3. So I'm going to what? Rise over run. So I start at the y-intercept, and I rise how much? 2. 1, 2. And I run how much? 3. 1, 2, 3. Bang. Look at that. Right on that line. Exactly where it should be, right? Connect the yellow ones, and I got the same exact line as I had for the red one. So it's 2 different ways to graph the same line, all right? Depends on which one you like better. Actually, it doesn't, because sometimes they say in the instructions, find or use the x and y intercepts to graph it. And then sometimes they'll say, use, I didn't even give you the name of it. The y equals mx plus b, that's got a name. And sometimes they'll say, use y equals mx plus b to graph it. All right? It's called, let me go back to, where did I do it? Yeah, I guess right here. I'll just show you. Well, what do you have? What is this thing?
It's right under.
Oh, yeah, right here. Okay, what do we call that thing right there? Call it the slope. I'm sorry, the whole thing. Point to the whole thing. So we have a slope, right? So we call it the slope, and we have an intercept. So we use the word intercept, and that's your name of your form. It's the slope intercept what? Form. Okay? So we call it the slope intercept form. Better known as y what? Equals mx plus b. Okay? It's the same thing. Slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, they're the same exact thing. Make sense? So do you like the slope intercept form? Yeah. You would rather do the x and y intercept things? Yeah. Like right here, look, you had to do some work. All right, either one, you're going to have to do a little bit of work. But on this one, all you had to do is just solve for y right there, and then you could graph it with no big deal at all. So look, 2 steps. You subtracted an x, you divided by -3. 2 steps. You got the slope intercept form, and then you're good to go. All right? Yeah, there was a few things we didn't get to. Do this. Do as many as you can. All right? Do as many as you can. And tomorrow, I'll officially assign this. Okay? I'll teach a little bit more tomorrow. Probably won't take as long. But do as many as you can with that homework I gave you. And then we'll officially give it to you tomorrow.